Concussions are the most common form of brain injury, but they're also notoriously hard to diagnose. And that's why new research is looking in probably the last place you'd expect as a potential way of detecting them, your urine. That's right. Joining me now is CTV science and technology specialist Dan Riskin. I'm guessing, 7:30 is not too early to talk about this. Good morning to you.
To talk about head injuries or urine? I don't know which one's more disconcerting at this hour of the day, but let's go for it.
Let's go. Let's talk about concussions overall. So across Canada, 200,000 concussions are diagnosed each year. That number could be higher because they're so difficult to detect. Why?
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem is you have them a lot in sports settings. And in a sports setting, there's a real motivation on behalf of the athlete to get back in the game. They love the game. They want to win that game that they're in right now, or maybe it's part of a playoff run. And that tendency happens with professional athletes, but it also happens with kids. And of course, those are two groups that everybody cares very much about. We all want our athletes to be healthy. We want to make sure that they are taking care of themselves so they can have long, healthy careers. Sidney Crosby, of course, had a really difficult run with concussions, as have many other NHLers. And so it really matters on that end. But of course, with kids, arguably, it's an even bigger deal because when you send your kids out to play, you're hoping that they're building skills to help them in life. You don't want to give them brain injuries. And so it's important to be able to diagnose those as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah, you pair that with the information that we're also learning from new research about the long-term effects of what happens when you have a concussion. So explain to me the how. How are researchers out of Boston Children's Hospital able to detect concussions through urine samples?
Yeah, it's really interesting because this is one of these things that happened before the pandemic that has happened a lot less during the pandemic, which is people bumping into each other in a hallway or at a conference. And basically you had somebody who was complaining they didn't know how to find out who had a concussion. And then somebody else said, hey, I look at biomarkers in urine. Let's try. So they got a bunch of college athletes, 95 of them, half of which had concussions and half of which did not have concussions. And they got urine samples from them. This was a data set that was already available to the concussion researchers, and they just handed it over to the urine sample analysts, and they were able to find two biomarkers that seem to be present in people who don't have concussions but disappear when people have concussions. And this doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens very frequently. And it's these two factors that are thought to be related to the brain healing. And so the idea is that when you're not injured, you expel this stuff because you're not using it. And so it shows up in your blood, it shows up in your urine. But when you've got a brain injury and your brain's trying to heal, those proteins are taken up and they're being used. And so they have big, long, fancy scientific names that don't really matter, but there are two of them. And they do seem to be good flags that could let a coach or a doctor or any healthcare provider know, hey, this is somebody that probably has had a concussion.
Yeah, and once you know that it's there, you can move on to treatment. So what is this Boston team hoping to do with these kinds of findings?
Well, I mean, one of the great missions of this is to have a very simple, standardized test that you can give to somebody to say whether they have a concussion or not. And this doesn't quite get there. This gets to about 78% of the way there, 78% correctness, so to speak, where you know who has a concussion and who doesn't. You just use the biomarkers to try to get your right answer. You can pair this with other kinds of tests, like having a person walk down a hallway and measuring how quickly they walk. That's another standardized measure of whether they have a concussion or not. If you put those together, you get up to about 85% efficiency. But there's another piece of this, which is the biomarkers themselves. What does it say about the way the brain is healing that those biomarkers vanish when a person has a concussion? Maybe they're more important than we realize, and maybe research needs to go into figuring out exactly what they're doing and whether there might be a medicine that could take advantage of that and give people a little boost as they're trying to heal from concussions. Because right now, there is no cure for concussions other than to sit on sidelines and hope it gets better.
Well, this is what I was thinking. If you can identify them, then yeah, medicine might be the next route. You and I always like to talk about other applications. So what could potentially be some other applications for this kind of research?
Well, what's exciting about this, as I alluded to, is the fact that you've got people with different skill sets that are just sort of helping each other out. And this is one of the sort of sad things about the pandemic is that these people don't bump into each other in the hallway as much as they used to in hospitals and universities and in other settings.
And they're not playing sports.
As we get back, as we get back to that, we're going to be, seeing more and more of this stuff. But endometriosis, cancer, these are things that biomarkers in urine have been used for before. And there's probably a whole host of other things that technology might be applied to. And so we'll just hope that science keeps going forward.
Dan, I always like talking to you, but it's really nice to talk about a medical science story. It's a little different this time in the middle of January.
Not your typical 7:30 in the morning conversation, but take care.
Concussions and pee, not what I was expecting.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.